Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Leesa Lambert. I'm from the Little Bookroom, a children's only bookshop in Melbourne, and it is my great pleasure to be here this afternoon and introduce to you Bronwyn Bancroft. Now, we all know Bronwyn's beautiful picture books, but you may not know that Bronwyn has been creating art all her life and has worked across a huge number of mediums. And in fact, we were thrilled to discover that you were one of the very first Australians invited to show in Paris because of your work in fashion and textiles.
Wow.
So cool. We are here today to mainly talk about Bronwyn's most recent book, which has been a very long time in the making. It is Remembering Linesville, which is a beautiful memoir, creative exploration, mixed medium. It's just stunning. So
thanks.
I need to have it in my hands. So Linesville, where exactly is it, Bronwyn, for our audience?
Well, it's in the Bundjalung Nation in northern New South Wales. As you would know, that identify in the Kulin Nation here for the Aboriginal community. I'm a part of the Bundjalung Nation, so it's near the base of the Bundjalung State Forest, but it's about 2 hours from Coffs Harbour, which is a bit of a tourist destination, but it's inland, so it's quite remote and, a lot of bush there, and that's where my family have been since the beginning of time in Australia. Yes.
So what was the closest town, you say, in the book?
Grafton is an hour and Coffs Harbour's 2 hours, so that's kind of... I mean, for Victorians, I don't know if you get out of state much, but, it's kind of, difficult to kind of pinpoint it for people if they haven't been to those two major places.
And you mentioned to me before that you've had to do a lot of research to confirm that your memories are accurate and all of that sort of stuff as well with Uncle Pat.
Yeah,
Tell us about Uncle Pat.
Well, Uncle Pat's actually features in the book, but he's 92 and he'll turn 93 on the 22nd of August. And 23 years ago, my father died, and I just went to Uncle Pat and said, well, you have to be my dad. And he said, do I have a choice? And I went, well, yeah, you do. You can either be it or not be it. And he went, well, I think I'll be it. And so he's a very dry man and a very hard man to get information out of. And so we've just basically spent the last 23 years, I bought his old land, which is our traditional lands, but I bought his old house. And so I live, a bit between two worlds. I live in the bush and I live in Balmain in the city in Sydney. And we've just basically grown, very close together. And I had to get him, because it's oral history, to vet it. And then also to get my first cousins, who are 70 and 71, to actually go through the information and make sure that my childhood memories were actually correct. So it's been a kind of an elongated process in actually getting the book delivered, and it's quite a departure from my other books as well, and it's probably more the direction that I'd like to go into in the future. It's very exciting to have a personal memoir about your family, and I'm promoting the book as everybody's got a story. And I think, as Australians, we've all got this fantastic and not so fantastic history, but the more that we actually integrate it and understand it with each other, then we're actually going to leave each other with a great legacy about our stories.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of my favourite spreads is this beautiful moment where this gorgeous photo of the mini roses. It's just this perfect blend of the traditional Aboriginal art working beautifully with something that we consider non-Aboriginal, and it's perfect. It's not a juxtaposition, it's a partnership, and it's just so clever and so profound.
I really like that page, because now we've got another bush still at Linesville, which always has to be with the roses, which is like I don't particularly like roses, but Uncle Pat loves them. But you have to turn, he likes the bush to be round, so you've got to turn all of the long sort of spreads that come and turn them back in, so you're making like a big round bloom of roses when it comes out, and they're tiny little miniature sort of yellow ones and pink and white. So yeah, it's kind of a funny overlay in terms of history, but it's just something that he particularly adores, and I hold the memory for my grandmother as well, so, and I'll hold it for him. So yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah.
And these little features in the border here are all hand drawn and take us through the process of these beautiful borders. So
when I did the borders, I wanted to actually sort of personalise them and take a graphic or an emblematic moment out of the book. So basically, all of the images in the border have been hand drawn to quite a large scale, and then reduced and put onto archival paper, and then cut out meticulously with a scalpel. And then replaced back into the highly patterned border. So yeah, it was fairly time-consuming, but really rewarding, artistically to do that. Yeah.
Well, and it gives so much depth to the book. I think we could talk about this page, for the rest of the day.
Oh,
if you'd like to. But how long then would this take you? Artwork.
It's kind of hard to estimate that, because I'm a process worker, so I'll work across the whole 16, images or the pages at any given time. So I'm working, perhaps I might be doing the grass here, and then as soon as I've done that, I'll move it, shift, and go to another page. So this book would have probably take about 3.5 months to complete. But it's not so much the time, because you don't actually factor in the time when you're doing something that you love. It's just, you do have the contract deadline by the publishers that you have to adhere to, but at the end of the day, the love of the book, I think you can't really quantify or qualify that. Yeah, that's the way I think about it.
It's beautiful. Do you have any memories that you were quite sad to leave out? How did you really choose what to include and what not to include?
Well, I wanted to put Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal relationships in there over a period of time that was incredibly important to me. And I think the pride of my English grandfather and the fact that he married 2 Aboriginal sisters, one who died, and then my grandmother who came out to look after her children. And it was a very difficult situation in a remote community, because Aboriginal people didn't want Aboriginal people marrying non-Aboriginal people, and non-Aboriginal people didn't want marrying, white people. And so they had a lot of conflict. And the thing that I loved about our family is the tenacity with which they just approached it, and they kept the family together against all these odds. And actually, Dad was a pivotal person in my own life, of course, as you would hope any parent would be. But the one thing that he did was always wanted us to get an education, because he wasn't allowed to get an education. He was actually denied an education in this country because he wasn't a citizen until 67. So at the end of the day, that to give all of his children an education, which he did, was a absolutely pivotal moment for him, and something that I really think that was very special for us. Yeah.
Well, and we might just even segue into the work that your son has carried down. So the generations and generations of family advocating education.
Yes.
Could you tell us about AIM?
Well, my son runs an organisation called the Australian Indigenous Mentoring Experience, where we actually mentor with university students, young Aboriginal people, to get them to stay in school and transition. Basically, our emphasis, because I sit on his board, the emphasis is to transition and keep kids to year 10. And then we find after that if they've got the methodology about how they can educate and stay in the education system, then we can get them to year 12, and then we can get them through university. So Jack started this when he was 19. He's now 28 in June. And so his contribution to the education sector in Australia is probably unparalleled in terms of a young Aboriginal person having amazing initiatives. So that he often says that many things that started him was the fact that my dad wanted us to be educated. I'm on my 4th degree. I'm just completing my PhD. So education's been an important part for me as well. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. See, it looks so cool.
Can you show us Uncle Pat?
Well, Uncle Pat went to war. All the boys went to war from the first family. Where's the photo of him? He's actually there. So he's very young there though. Like they signed up very young, so he might have been 20. So they all signed up for war. They all went to the First World War and the Second World War. In the Second World War, Dad went to Madang and Uncle Pat to Darwin and Madang and Rabaul. So yeah, they were. It was an interesting mix for people, non-Aboriginal and Aboriginal, to be in the armed forces. And Dad he found equality in the army, which he didn't actually have in living in the society at the time. And when he came back, he'd made all these non-Aboriginal mates because they'd obviously been in the war together. So they ended up being enduring friends for all their life. Yeah, very
Something good came of it.
Poignant stuff.
And they all came back.
Yeah, and they all came back.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah. And in this one I've hand-drawn the potatoes and the farthings and the pumpkins, and I hand-drew the sort of frames around here and then placed the old photos. I was very lucky to have a lot of old photographs that I could access.
It's wonderful, and I just feel like you just never know what's going to come out at you on the next page.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun being an illustrator, and this one writing it as well. Yeah, that's
the old Ford.
That's us driving down to go on a holiday, and I've stuck all the photos of all the family like this in it. It's pretty weird.
It's so cheerful.
It's pretty funny
and so relatable, so iconic.
Well, I had to ring my mum up to remember that I had the right colour because I knew it was a blue Ford, but I had to make sure I got exactly the right colour because you've really got to be true to history when you're doing books like this, because otherwise you can be criticised by family, which I didn't want. Yeah.
No, wonderful. And the swimming with snakes is true.
Yeah, we're still swimming with the snakes. So yeah, you just got to respect nature. That's all, and we've been taught to do that. So it's a beautiful, peaceful, and incredibly pristine sort of country. So big mountains, rainforests, beautiful creek, and just lots and lots of animals. So it's quite a contrast to living in Sydney, as the same as in Melbourne, for city people. Yeah.
And in the book, you really do take the reader right there. I'd really love to visit myself. I just read the passages and want to imagine walking around the property.
Oh, it's
walking the boundaries, like that lovely old Jackie French book.
I did that with Jackie French. I did the front cover for that years ago. Yeah. Wow, I hadn't thought about that for years.
It's very special.
Yeah.
We might take a couple of questions in a few moments, but I just want to get back to the writing, I suppose, and the challenge of bringing an oral tradition to the page and still managing to keep that sense of almost conversation.
Yeah, it is very conversational. I think when I sort of wrote it out, I was actually just talking. So, I basically kind of worked with Erica Wagner, who is from Allen and Unwin, and I just basically spoke about the important things in my life and what I touched on, but pretty well the words that came out of my mouth in sequence was how the book actually ended up. So we didn't have to do very much editing at all, because I've been working for the last sort of 30 years collecting information, listening to people, keeping all the information in one place in here, and then just trying to work out how to articulate that back into making it so that people could actually understand it, and not making it too difficult for people to actually understand it, making it that the commonalities were really about what could be the same in anybody's family, So the editing process was actually quite minimal, and we pretty well got the whole book in an initial draft, which was fabulous. Yeah.
And there is a beautiful simplicity to the language, but that depth comes back as well with phrases like my father's mother's land. Not grandmother. Yeah. There's a significance to those
tradition.
Tradition.
Yeah, I think and this is a tricky page here. I love this page because Uncle Pat and I were sitting up under the pear tree, which is indicated in the latter part of the book, but this is a little pocket knife, and these are all artefacts from our traditional area, and this big axe here got taken by somebody, but this little pocket knife's about that big, and we were sitting up there one night and Uncle Pat said, "Oh, you're very flash, you go to all these flash restaurants in the city and all this stuff, and I'm going to give you $1,000 dinner." And I went, "How's that going to work?" Anyway, he caught a perch, and under the regulations of the fisheries and everything, he could get fined $1,000 for catching the perch. So he handed it to me on a tin plate and then gave me a 10,000-year-old pocket knife to cut it up with. So these are the sort of little subtleties around how you can actually achieve a request from him to actually showcase the artefacts, so that he said if it ever turned up in a museum, it'd be printed in the book and then we would be able to reclaim it back to country. But he's a very humorous dude, so as you can see why I've enjoyed his company, and I wanted to honour him in this book too, particularly. Yeah. Cool. See, there's all these little hidden things that you wouldn't know.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at some other pages then. This page, striking the gold mine, the foreignness of the machinery invading and disrespecting the land, and just the black and white is so bold and.
Well, it's really actually because Uncle Pat, my father, ended up being an engineer in the war without any education. He ran all of the. He ran all the barges. He was responsible for thousands of men and had to actually regulate all of the machinery and everything. So it was very clever. And this piece of machinery, this crusher, is actually on the property that I'm living in now, and we're just about to sort of restore it. And if it wasn't for my grandfather, we wouldn't actually be living in our traditional country now, because he had to crush. I mean, Uncle Pat, Auntie Dulcie, Dad, Uncle George and Uncle Mick, all of these children were working in mines at the age of 8, but almost gleefully or willingly, because it was about staying in country. And so when grandfather won, because there was a settler there that had actually consumed all of the land, 86,000 hectares were given to him as a parcel of land, which is an incredible amount of land. And that was in our traditional country. So my grandfather was very staunch, and he just basically he won. They used to call it when you found like gold, crushed it, you'd won it. So he had 36 ounces of gold, and he was able to buy 3 parcels of land. And I probably won't say the name of the person, but the man who acquired the land came down with a few of his stockmen and said to grandfather, "I'm going to move you off and you'll be gone." And Pa said, "Well, I'll just kill you, because I'll have nothing to live for, and all of this land that you've stolen will mean nothing to you." So he left him alone. And I actually, the Myers, who are quite a big family, have inherited the actual land, and there was a castle that was made and all this stuff. And I just love it when Bales Myers buys my artwork and puts it in the castle. And I go, this is just a little bit of payback for all the stolen land and the money and the servants, and because my grandmother worked as a servant in the castle. Just a little bit of payback. And Bales Meyer actually bought me a newspaper one day up at Linesville, and he was driving past with Sarah, and I said, "I'll keep this," and I wrote on it, "Delivered by Bales Meyer. I reckon it's the most expensive paper boy in the country." And he delivered my newspaper. Like, yay.
Sweet.
Very humorous things happen in the country.
Now, folks, do we have any questions from the audience, or shall we keep chatting away? Because I'd love to have a look at some other spreads as well, and these anecdotes, I just want more. Let's keep going over here. Who is this dog?
That's my dad, and that's his red setter. And these are family photographs of, particularly with Pa and Grandma and Uncle Mick. But in our family, everyone's weird because Uncle Pat's name is Gordon Kelman, but we call him Pat. Uncle Mick is John Roy, but we call him Uncle Mick. Uncle Toby is Norman Rex, but we call him Uncle Toby. So everybody in the family renamed themselves with nicknames. And in this photograph, that's a little 2-year-old me.
Oh.
And I put this in here with Dad because Dad was two at the time as well. And this is my grandmother sitting up on the, there's the transforming rock, which is actually a site for us because it's like an elephant. When you go to see it, it could be an elephant which is a strange concept to think in terms of Aboriginal sort of sites, but it's not. It's just about the fact that it's actually when you see it at different times of the day, it changes. So it becomes all these really weird looking things. So it can be, if you go back in the afternoon, it took me about 8 years to actually see the form changing. So it can be all sorts of things, but one time in the morning it'll have its trunk down, and when you go back in the afternoon, it's actually lying there. So there's sort of weird little things about the visual interplay. So I wanted to put that in as well. And that's my grandfather, and he's dolly potting, which is getting a big, large steel base utensil and then using a huge piece of steel to crush the quartz. And then you basically sort of wash that out in a pan and, basically get rid of the junk. And in the bottom you'll have residue, and the gold hopefully is there. And if you're actually panning in a gully, you can pick up the black mud and pull the gold out of the bottom of the pan with the black mud and hold it in there so you can move around with it and not lose it. Yeah, it's all really tricky. It's just all stuffed. And these are this is the wedding band. And this is the family tree that's kept us all together, so... Yeah.
And it's the stories that go with the photographs that just bring so much out.
Yeah. No, I used a lot of that because I just thought it was fun, and that's me and my older sister in bed because we used to have to sleep on the veranda, and we never you never ever thought that you couldn't sleep on the veranda. Like sometimes now you'd freak out if you went into the bush and you might go, well, I don't, but I've had people down there that are so windy they go, oh my God, I've got to get out of here. That's only because they don't know the country. And that's kind of us, and possibly my two most favourite brothers, and they're in the bed opposite us, and I just chopped their heads off and stuck them there like this. So, I mean, it's pretty funny. And and again, the frogs just hand drawn and then cut out again, which I thought was a really nice way to actually do it.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and I think you'll find... Is this how I've done the mountains? Oh no! In some of my work, I often I make the mountains into faces, so the silhouette, because there's always people watching you. Yeah, so when you're at home, you can see the silhouette sometimes of people either lying down or the whole face in
that's
the mountain. Yeah, often do that.
Now I'll have to reread.
Yeah. Well, you'll have a different context for it now, won't you?
Absolutely. Here we go.
What's that?
A beautiful.
Oh, yeah, that's swimming in the creek. We all swim in the creek. That's fantastic. The artefact page.
Talk. The dream.
Oh, that's a dream, yeah. I have a lot of dreams, and I'll wake up in the middle of the night at 2 o'clock and jump up and go, oh my God, that dream. So in this one, I thought Uncle Pat was getting sick, and I was, and he actually did have a stroke this year, but he's recovered fully. It was fantastic. And in the dream, I was concerned that we hadn't done enough work together, and our friendship and relationship. So in this, it was all based on him saving me, and we have a lot of big floods up our way. So the bridge just got taken away, and he just rescues me. So dreams can often be a great resource for illustration or creative work, even when you're really tiny. As a young child, you can have a dream, and you can get up and write about that dream, and it might end up being in a book. So it's pretty tricky. And I'm talking to you.
And this beautiful spread. I wanted to tell you this story now so that one day you might do the same, a call to action. It's probably a really wonderful place for us to end this conversation too, but if you could talk us through the ancestors.
Yeah, these are the guardians. So these are the past guardians or custodians. I need a little drink of water.
Absolutely, and if you look very closely, there are hearts.
Yeah, there are red hearts, though. In this particular one, which is not, it is kind of sad, but in the past, our family was massacred, the clan, so we come from one living relative. So the sense of survival is absolutely unique. And around here I've got black and white hearts to indicate the melding of the family, but the red indicate that we've lost people. But these are the families now that stand in unison together, so each of the hands actually make a heart as well. So what I'm trying to reinforce within every context that I do within, particularly this family book, is that no matter what, love will endure, and you can always overcome everything. Every conceivable thing that you think is the worst thing in the world, you can actually overcome. You have a fair bit of endurance, but you can overcome it.
And that's what you say in your afterword.
Yeah.
I urge you to listen to your old people, write stuff down, do drawings, and most of all, take pride in your family's struggles and victories.
Yeah.
And I've taken that to heart. I'm making a lot of time in my life to speak with my grandparents and my great aunts and uncles and research the stories that go along with the wonderful old photos that we haven't known anything about, and it's so rewarding. It's so wonderful.
It's like the ABC or the SBS says, a million stories and still going. Everybody's got a story, and it's even part of humanity, but just part of what we are in Australia. Those stories are really enlightening, and they teach us about the human struggle, and that's, I think, a very, very important thing for all of us. Yeah.
No, thank you.
Cool.
Thank you, Bronwyn.
My
Thank you,
pleasure.
an enormous contribution.
Thank you.